Welcome to my channel, Ken here. Today let's take a look at the OneODio Studio Max 1. Let's go! Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, let me know what you think of these headphones. So here we have the OneODio Studio Max 1, and basically they are a closed back circumaural or around the ear headphone. They're pretty light and they weigh 350 grams. They have an impedance of 32 ohms, which is pretty normal these days. Used to be low, but it's pretty normal. They are $160, so very affordable. Full disclosure, OneODio sent these to me and they sponsored this video, but the thoughts and opinions, mine alone. Should you consider buying these headphones, please consider checking the affiliate link below. It's at no additional cost to you and it'll help my channel. A couple of things to note about these is they have clearly marked left and right. They have some buttons here that I'll explain a little bit. They have 4 ways that you can connect these to the audio source. So one would be Bluetooth. They also provide this low latency transmitter, and they have a 1/4 inch and an 1/8 inch plug hardwired. And unfortunately, they are curly cord, and if you ever watched any of my other videos, I really don't like them. Since they are Bluetooth, and you can charge them here with a USB-C connection. They claim that it has 120 hours of battery life for listening. I have no way of testing that because most of my listening was done with a 1/4 inch, but I only charged them once and they never ran out of battery during the whole testing period, which lasted about 4 weeks. So I have to take their word for it. So there's some controls if you choose to use them wirelessly. And there's a connectivity button, there's an on-off button, and an up-down button. So you can essentially turn up and down the volume without reaching for whatever device it is that you're using. Now, with the Bluetooth part of it, not this extended piece of wireless, I was mightily impressed for how long this range was. I mean, I kept walking and walking and walking. I must have walked, I don't know, 100 feet. And this was through an iPad and it was in the house. And I was outside the house about 80 to 100 feet. So pretty impressive. When it's corded, they are pretty benign and easy to drive, and they're very efficient. I could not find any efficiency data on these headphones, so I don't know how efficient they are, but they seem to be pretty efficient, at least 100 dB per milliwatt, something in that range. No problems driving with any headphone amp, including the cord or the iPhone or the iPad, etc., etc. I mean, everything was driving it no problem. The insulation here, the isolation, I should say, for the outside world is about average for closed back headphones. The isolation or the insulation when you use closed back headphones, they're about on par with most other closed back headphones. I feel like the ear pad here is a little bit small for my ear, so I have to adjust them a little bit to get a proper seal. But other than that, they work fine. The other thing I have to mention about these, they took quite a significant break-in time. I broke them in for 30 hours continuous playing because at first I thought they sounded very closed in and dark and kind of boomy, and they kind of open up after a day or so. 30 hours, I would say, before they settle in. One thing I want to point out is that this is a curious design choice. I think it's unique to these headphones. So if you look here, there's a 1/4 inch plug right here and an 1/8 inch plug right here. It comes with one cord. So if you want to use the 1/4 inch, which is this one, then you have to plug in the 1/8 inch here, like that. If you want to use the other way around, you want to use the 1/8 inch, you plug the 1/4 inch in here, like that. I don't think I've ever seen that before, so that's unique to this headphone. A couple of minor notes I want to point out about these headphones. They claim in the manual that you can pick up calls and stuff like that with them. That means they must have a microphone in them. I did not test that. I thought I was outside my range here for this channel. Apparently these are developed in collaboration with DJs, but to me, the ultimate test is how they sound. So how do they sound? So how do they sound? Right off the box, they were muffled, dark, and had a very closed-in top end. So I didn't even bother listening to them until I broke them in after 24, 30 hours. They did open up in the top end, and they got a little bit tighter overall and a little more tight in the stereo perspective. Still, after all this time, they still did sound somewhat boomy to me, and they definitely had a lot of energy from 80 to 160 hertz, so in the bass range and the lower mid range, and so it made them sound very thick. On top of that, they had a little bit of a dip in the upper mid range. But you gotta remember, these are $160 headphones, so if you compare it to the best, that's a different story. But let's just talk about in their class here, in their price range. And let me just say right off the bat, they're very, very good in their price range. So, couple of things. The very low bass, so below 60, 50 hertz around there, the bottom octave is a little bit anemic, but there's a lot of energy above it. When you're listening to, let's say, metal guitars, you're going to get a very thick guitar sound, or there's always going to be a lot of bass guitar or synth bass because of that range. Let's talk about their positives. First and foremost, they're super convenient to use because they're not very heavy, they're lightweight. You can use them in 4 different modes, which is great. You can walk around with them, and in a studio, somebody really doesn't want that wire dangling around them. You can use them with their low latency mode. However, it's a little bit hard to incorporate that into your audio interface system on your computer, but there's a workaround, and I tried a couple of different ways, and it seemed to be working fine that way. Granted, in their price range, they're not as punchy as an $800 headphone that's, let's say, 4 times more expensive or 5 times more expensive. But they do a really good job, especially for their price. So I was very impressed with that. I gotta warn you, if you use them for critical listening, I wouldn't pair them with something that's too warm sounding, like the headphone preamp. It's better if it's a little bit bright to counteract that warmth that's inherent in these. When I listened to them both wirelessly and with wired, I didn't think they sounded quite the same. When they were wired and playing through a headphone amplifier, they were warmer and fuller. When they were wireless, they were a little more accurate actually in the tonal balance. And remember, all headphones sound different to different people because of their ear shape and the cup shape. So this is why I always recommend that you gotta try out the headphones before you buy anything. It's gotta be for you, right? If you want to do critical listening with these and use them in the studio for mixing, stuff like that, I think they're a little bit too colored for that. However, somebody might pick these up for an overdubbing session and prefer these. Only time will tell. So yeah, for $160, I definitely recommend them, but do try them on. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, take care.